back to the What Happened podcast with Owen and Ryan. This is a very special episode, Owen. It's our first themed episode. It's a special Halloween episode.
I'm
you
very
ready?
excited.
As
Spooky.
Picture this, Owen. Elementary school. You're trick-or-treating. You dressed as a ghost. You have a bedsheet over you with some eye holes cut out. You got that stupid little plastic pumpkin bucket that doesn't fit any candy. Got to get a pillowcase. That's the pro tip right there.
I grew up into a pillowcase, yeah.
As you're walking, your friend Jared tells you a story. And you think it's stupid. You think it's just Jared being Jared. But when you get home, you lay in bed and just belly full of Snickers and Reese's and Skittles. And you just can't seem to shake that story that Jared told you. So what do, Owen? You grab the nearest candle you can find and you go to a mirror. You wait till the clock tolls midnight. And then you say that dreaded name 3 times. Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. You think nothing happens at first until you see a hand reaching out from the darkness. You turn around and you see the ghostly visage of a pale Victorian woman's face as she, in one hand, clutches a dead baby and the other reaches out with a bloody knife. And this is how she takes your life. So yeah, that's Bloody Mary. We're talking about Bloody Mary.
The cocktail?
I legitimately hate those. I don't know why.
They are the grossest things.
It's tomato juice with pepper.
Yeah, it's horrible. And then they put like a celery stick in there.
Yeah. So yeah, we're talking about Bloody Mary. It's kind of an interesting story. I didn't really know
the story of Queen Mary or the story of how it became Bloody Mary.
I didn't know why she was called Bloody Mary.
Okay.
I also didn't actually know the story of Queen Mary, but we'll get into it, okay? So the year is 1516. February 18th in Greenwich, England, Mary the First is born. She's the only daughter between Henry VIII and his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. So Mary is the eldest daughter of Henry VIII. So keep that in mind.
And he killed a lot of people too, right? Didn't he like kill his wives?
He killed a couple of his wives.
Okay.
So, Mary was the perfect child. She was extremely well educated. She, by the time she was 9, she could read and write in Latin, which is an impressive feat. I can barely write English. And she would often entertain guests by playing songs on the virginal, which is like a weird harpsichord.
Okay. Real Beethoven vibe.
And her father, Henry VIII, would often boast to guests that this girl never cries.
It's a weird flex.
But as we all know, Owen, it's the weird ones, the quiet ones, that you have to watch out for. So in 1525, Mary's still 9.
Okay.
And her father sends her to the border of Wales to preside over the Council of Wales and the Marches.
So I know they did a lot of stuff for like when you were young, but she was just like in charge of like a border, presumably at 9?
I think it was mostly just like she was in charge of it in name only.
Yeah, and there's clearly a guy being like, no, Mary.
Yeah,
this
but
is what we're going to do.
But this position was normally given to the Prince of Wales, so it still just shows that Henry
trusted her.
Thinks she's super smart.
I mean, she didn't have a brother, right?
Not at this time.
Okay.
We will get there.
So that's probably also why she got the position.
Yeah. So, even though Henry thought that she could be a good leader,
okay,
he still lamented her for her femininity. Because, as we all know, Henry VIII always wanted a son to pass on his title to. He even went so far as to create a whole new church just so that he could divorce his wives.
What was that church?
The Protestant church. At the time...
Wait, so is that really how the Protestant church got its start?
Yeah, at the time, England was Catholic.
Okay, yeah, and now they're like, aren't they still widely Protestant? Isn't that like the whole thing with the Mayflower, right? They wanted to leave because Protestant or something.
I don't know, actually.
I don't know. This might be somewhat of a history podcast, and I just pulled that right out.
Yeah, so he creates this whole new church. Mary it's important to note Mary is baptized Catholic.
Okay.
Um,
So wait, so she was baptized well before Protestantism, whatever you want to call it, was established then, right?
No, I think Henry had already done it. I'm actually not sure because his first wife, I think he created the church to divorce his first wife, and this is his first wife.
So then Mary was probably already around, was baptized Catholic, and then started Protestantism. I don't know if that's what it's called. I'm just wondering. It has nothing to do with anything.
Hey, Owen.
Yeah.
I really don't know.
Okay, continue.
So, Henry VIII, starting this church, divorcing all his wives, led to the famous song written by the Monkees. It's called "I'm Henry VIII, I Am." And if I could read you a quick lyric, it goes, "I'm Henry VIII, I am. Henry VIII, I am, I am." And Owen, I just think that speaks volumes.
Yeah, I mean, it hits deep. I'm sure it took him a long time to think of those lyrics.
The dumbest fucking chorus. So, the whole Catholic Protestant thing is super important. We'll get there later.
Okay.
But for now, we'll fast forward to 1547.
I'm excited.
Henry VIII is dead, and Mary's younger brother, Edward VI, is King of England.
Okay.
So Edward had Mary removed from the line of succession.
I get it.
Because Edward was a Protestant.
Yeah, okay, so the whole religious... Yep.
Yeah. So after Edward dies of the consumption, which is just weird, it's just the tuberculosis, and they just didn't know what it was, so they called it the consumption.
Oh, I thought you were going to say he, ate something, but
he
died of TB.
He ate too much Del Taco or something.
Oh, I could use Del Taco.
Too many bangers and mash. So he dies, and he appoints Lady Jane Grey to become Queen Regent of England.
Was she his wife at the time, or just a special little lady?
Honestly, I don't remember. I think she was a noble of some sort.
Okay, and he just didn't want a sister. So
yeah, but she was backed by many leading politicians.
Okay.
So when Mary heard about this, she gathered a military force and marched to the Tower of London.
That's badass.
Where Lady Grey was awaiting coronation. And then when all the politicians saw that Mary had an army, they were like, I guess we're going with Mary on this one. So they arrested Lady Jane Grey. They executed her father for treason. And then, fun fact, after beheading Jane's father on treason charges, Mary initially spared Jane's life. And then she was thrown in prison. And then Mary realized that she could one day become a threat to the crown. So she executed Jane Grey and her husband.
Okay.
On the charges of high treason.
I mean, that's treason.
That's treason,
being
baby.
elected by someone else and then volunteering and then...
This was technically a coup because Mary was written out of the line of succession.
So, yeah.
But she was the king's daughter, so...
Yeah.
You can argue it either way. So Jane's rule only lasted 9 days, and she was never officially coronated.
I mean, at least she got a full week.
Yeah, it's more than I've been king
day
or queen.
7, you're really high up there. And then 8 comes around and you're like, oh, no, Mary's here.
Mary already had a propensity for violence, but it gets a lot worse, Owen.
Did she kill someone by this time? Or was it just her executing these 2 people?
Yeah.
All right, that's what started it for her?
I think so.
Okay.
So, in 1554, Mary married Philip of Spain.
Okay.
And she acted as the queen regent while Philip would just sort of do stuff with Parliament. Basically, Mary's in power and her husband is...
Good.
Yeah, he's kind of a cuck. So, also, I looked up a picture of him. He does look good. He got some cool ass leggings, the old timey white tights.
Yep.
Drip. So now that she's married, Mary can focus on her lifelong dream of having a child. But this was difficult for Mary. Since she was a teen, she had a ton of menstrual issues, including intense menstrual pain, irregularities in cycles, and frequency of cycles. So you could call her a Bloody Mary already.
There it is.
I'm sorry.
A horrible joke.
All her doctors just sort of attributed this to stress. And miraculously, in 1553, when Mary was 36, she became pregnant.
Okay.
So the due date was May 9th.
Oh, it's a day after my birthday.
Oh, yeah. May 8th, first week of May, right?
First week of May.
Yeah. So at this time, it was customary for noble women to lock themselves away before they gave birth.
It's just wild to me.
Yeah, so pretty much the only people seeing her were like her handmaids and like maybe like a midwife.
Okay.
So no one had seen her for 6 weeks, and eventually May 9th came and went, but no baby. So also at this time, doctors weren't allowed to examine a sitting monarch, so they didn't really know what was happening. So what they did was they just pushed the due date back to June.
Question: they weren't allowed to, like, any monarch or like a pregnant monarch in those 6-week period, or like the weeks leading up to, or they just weren't allowed to touch a monarch?
The article I found just said any sitting monarch.
It's wild.
They could not examine them.
Oh God. Okay. All right.
Which is weird. So due date's pushed back to June. And since no one had seen Mary for like pretty much a month at this point, some like rumors started spreading. Some people thought that the pregnancy was fake. Others thought that she had died in childbirth or she had a miscarriage. Other people thought that her belly getting bigger was just a big old tumor, which
That makes sense.
like a baby-sized tumor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So eventually her belly started shrinking though. And finally in August, they determined that no baby was coming. And they didn't know why or how this happened.
Did we ever like figure out?
We will get to that.
Okay. All right.
So Mary thought that this was God punishing her. So she gathered her resolve and set out on a new mission. Mary would reunite the Church of England. In 1554, Mary I would revive the Heresy Acts. I'm going to read the Heresy Act.
Okay.
The one that Mary passed.
Okay.
Because I think it has a lot of just cool language.
Oh boy.
For the eschewing and avoidance of errors and heresy, which of late has risen, grown, and much increased within this realm, for that the ordinaries have wanted authority to proceed against those that were infected therewith. Be it therefore ordained and enacted by authority of this present Parliament, that the statute made in the 5th year of the reign of King Richard II concerning the arrest and apprehension of erroneous heretical preachers, and one other statute made in the 2nd year of the reign of King Henry IV. Yeah, it's IV, that's 4, right? Yeah, okay. Henry IV, concerning the repressing of heresies and punishment of heretics, and also one other statute made in the 2nd year of the reign of King Henry V, concerning the suppression of heresy and lollardy, and every article, branch, and sentence contained in the same 3 several acts, and every of them shall from the 20th day of January next coming be revived and in full force, strength, and effect to all intents, constructions, and purposes forever.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I didn't follow a single word of that.
Yeah.
I understood Parliament.
So it's wordy.
Yeah, it's like trying to read Shakespeare.
So basically, there were multiple acts passed by previous kings.
And she just like got rid of all those and then put her own up.
No, so the 3 acts proposed by Henry IV, Henry V, and Richard II all allowed for the arrest and punishment of those deemed heretics.
Okay.
And Mary's father, Henry VIII, had those repealed so that he could divorce his wife.
And then she reenacted it.
So then, this act brought those 3 heresy acts back.
Okay.
So, now that Mary had reinstated these acts, she was specifically targeting the Protestants. She was always Catholic and resented her father and younger brother for their Protestant beliefs. The heresy acts being reinstated would lead to what is known as the Marian persecutions. Now, I couldn't really find where they're called the Marian persecutions. I thought it was because her name was Marian, but
Okay.
Mary isn't short. Like, her name's
It's
just
not
Mary.
short for Marian.
Yeah,
No.
so I don't know.
Could just be like a place or I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, maybe it's a saint. My high school was called Marian. I couldn't tell you why. It probably wasn't off that.
I have no idea, dude. So England has had some persecutions over the years. They're not like always the kindest people.
So I've heard.
Shout out India. You know what I mean?
A lot of places. You could probably name a few.
So these were different from other persecutions, though. Firstly, Mary had nothing to gain from these. They weren't politically motivated. They weren't like to secure her place in power. It was literally just religious reasons. There has never been a solely religious persecution in British history besides this, I believe. But there had been none before this.
Okay.
And the second reason they're different, Owen, I wrote your name in the script.
I appreciate that. I put your name a couple times in mine as well. So
the second reason they're different is because they are the most brutal persecutions in English history.
okay.
So 800 Protestants were forced into exile, and 288 members of the Protestant church were rounded up by force and burned at the stake until dead.
Oh god, 288 of them.
Yeah, like women too, like not just dudes.
Ugh.
And like, there's like large public executions at this time. But it's mostly just like a crowd like chucking cabbage at some guy until he gets his head cut off. But this is like people watching people burn alive.
Yeah, it can't be pretty.
It can't smell great either.
Yeah. Burnt flesh is not a appetizing smell.
Yuck. So after this, Mary I came to be known as Bloody Mary.
Okay, by like the people that
lived
within England.
It was mostly by Protestant writers.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And
Political
then it just
gain, right?
sort of took off with everybody.
Okay.
In 1557, Mary again thought she was pregnant. And in her will, she decreed that her husband Philip would be regent until the child grew up. But she never gave birth before she died in 1588 at the age 1558, I believe, at the age of 42. She was quite young.
Is that young for those days? I don't know. I
think in this case it was younger than most.
Okay, all right.
Because she had no heir, Mary's half-sister, Elizabeth I, became queen after her death.
Okay.
And you know Queen Elizabeth?
Yeah,
Like the famous
modern
one? No, like the famous one.
Like the Elizabethan era?
Yeah,
everything like
this
that.
is
That's
that
her?
Elizabeth.
Okay, all right. So she really turned it around.
Yes, she did. So, after, at Mary's funeral, John White, the Bishop of Winchester, had this to say. And I think this is, like, the monkeys quote was dumb. I think this is actually, like, a really good quote for Mary.
Okay.
She was a king's daughter, a king's sister. She was a king's wife. She was a queen, and by the same title, a king also.
That cut deep.
She just
he analyzed the shit out of her.
Yeah, she like had to like fight her brothers, and she was like trying to get power away from her sister. It was a whole thing, and she came out on top. Sort of. It's sort of unknown. Like I couldn't find anything on why this turned into a weird story that you tell your friends.
Yeah. You don't really know when that originated.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I mean that's where her name's gonna live on, I guess.
Huh. I mean, I know like the whole like spooky season trick-or-treating Halloween was like in the 70s mainly, I think. So like do you think it was probably like around then, or was this like some folklore dropped from like the 1500s?
Literally didn't find anything about
it. All
right. One important note. It's suspected that Mary's frequent menstrual issues and false pregnancies were caused by ovarian cysts or uterine cancer.
I mean, that makes sense. So maybe from that one pregnancy, quote unquote, are we thinking it's an ovarian cyst, or
they don't know
just
which
like
one it was,
an
but
insanely late ectopic pregnancy?
But they also think that this is how she died. Was
sense.
The cancer?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So that's the story of Bloody Mary, Owen.
I liked it. All right, and boy, do I have a story for you, Ryan.
I'm actually really excited about this one.
I didn't hint at all as to what this was, but you've spoken about it before, so I'm kind of stealing your idea. So what I wanted to do was find some like fairy tale or like nursery rhyme and find like a dark story to the nursery rhymes, which like there were a lot of, like the Pocket Full of Posies was the Black Death, like that kind of thing. We all know that, so I didn't want to delve into that. I tried to find something on the London Bridge, and I had this great like 2-page written thing on the London Bridge, and then I just found other articles that were saying it was fake. So
well, it burned down, right?
Burned down multiple times, but all right, I'll mention it real quick. It was, you know, when they're doing the London Bridge and then a kid goes underneath it and you wrap your arms around him and saying like arrest him or something like that.
Sure. I didn't have friends as a kid.
Or imprisoned him. They were saying that was because that they used to immure kids within the Bridge Foundation, which means like bury alive.
I do know they used to do that in churches.
Yeah, so that's why people thought it happened with the bridge, but then they couldn't find any actual literally concrete evidence, that people were buried there, so I decided not to roll with it because it wasn't like a, matter-of-fact thing. Gotcha. So what I went with, another great Halloween theme, and one that literally everyone knows about, but I'm hoping to shed some more light on it, is Dracula.
Okay.
All right, so everyone knows the famous Dracula,
well,
right?
Can I just ask you a quick question?
Yeah, of course.
What's your Dracula? Is it Bram Stoker's Dracula?
So it's Bram Stoker. I talk about himself. I talk about the Dracula itself, and then I also talk about Vlad Dracula.
I'm just saying, what's your preferred Dracula? Because I'm more of a Gary Oldman Dracula kind of man.
So I'm just going to begin.
Okay.
All right. So you're obviously pretty familiar with Dracula.
Correct.
So this is the true inspiration behind Dracula. In 1897, Bram Stoker, an Irish writer, wrote a novel called Dracula.
Great book.
Which has since become one of the classics of the Gothic horror genre and is said to be the inspiration behind almost all vampiric, vampire-esque things. So you can thank him for Twilight.
I just remember that in my history class, we watched Dracula Forever.
I think the OG one?
No,
like the 50s one or something?
The Gary Oldman one.
Oh, so that's why you like it.
And there was a scene that he wouldn't play for us because it had boobies. That's all I know.
What grade?
I was in high school.
Oh, you're old enough. Anyways, so even though Dracula is a fictional character, Stoker did not pull this out of thin air. Instead, Dracula is believed to be based on at least one real historical figure. The most popular candidate for the inspiration of Dracula is Vlad the Impaler. He also goes by Vlad Dracul or Vladimir III.
Good old Vlad.
Yeah. So you see Vlad Dracul, you see where Dracula, you see he was really original, put an A at the end.
It's like when you copy someone's homework and they're like, "Oh, just change it enough so they don't know."
Yeah, that's quite literally what he did.
Yeah.
So Bram Stoker. So I'm going to talk about the author for a little bit here. Give you some background on him. He was born in 1827 in Dublin, Ireland. He was the third of 7 children. Stoker, believe it or not, was bedridden at a young age from an unknown illness until he was 7 years old and was allowed to start school.
Maybe it was that vampire disease.
Yeah, that's why I started writing about it. Yeah, so he had a pretty crappy childhood to start. So that's probably what inspired a lot of his like horror themed, like Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah. He didn't have a great life growing up. Yeah. So instead of killing people, they wrote about stuff, which I feel like is probably a better outlet.
Good way to release some stress, I've heard.
Seems like a better outlet. He attended Trinity College in Dublin. He got a bachelor's in 1870 and a master's in 1875. So he turned his life around, ended up being an insanely smart guy. He was the president of the Scholars Philosophical Society.
Can I interject real quick?
Absolutely.
I just want to say that another person who had a troubled childhood and grew up to great success was the guy from Pawn Stars. He used to have seizures as a kid.
The bald guy?
The bald guy.
Well, his dad opened the store.
Yeah, but he used to have seizures as a kid and he was bedridden, and now he has just an amazing TV show.
He also divorced his wife to get with this really hot girl, and he's younger than his son, so he's doing great.
Power moves.
Exactly. So he got his master's and bachelor's. He was part of the Philosophical Society within his school, and that's where he wrote his first work, Sensationalism is Fiction and Society.
That sounds like something I wouldn't enjoy.
Yeah, it's Sam. I didn't delve into it at all because I was like, no.
It doesn't have Rick from Pawn Stars in it.
So Bram Stoker wrote many books prior to his famous Dracula. 2 of the most famous ones are The Waters Moo, M-O-U. I don't know if it's Moo or Mau. I don't know. And The Mystery of the Sea. These books were written in a place called Cruden Bay in Scotland. So what Stoker would do is he'd go around to a lot of places for inspiration. Cruden Bay was his most popular one, but the one that really got famous was Whitby, which was a small town on the English coast. That was the theme, or that's at least one of the places that Dracula took place.
Yeah, I remember that.
So in Whitby in not 1980, 1890.
That one.
Yeah,
the other 1980.
So Whitby in 1890, when it's first said he started to work on Dracula, he met Armin van Buuren.
Sounds a lot like Armin Vampire.
So Armin van Buuren was a Hungarian Jewish writer and obviously an Advent traveler. Armin, born in Szent Georgi, I practiced that. I think
Good
that's how I
old
say it.
Szent Georgi.
What was then the Kingdom of Hungary and now present-day Slovakia on the ridge of the Carpathian Mountains. Now that's important.
Okay, I'll remember that.
Armin's dark stories of the Carpathian Mountains, it's a 932-mile-long mountain range in Central and Eastern Europe, if you were wondering, are believed to be the inspiration behind Dracula and Stokes' fascination with the area. So essentially, he met this guy that was from here. The guy told him like all of his like native folklore, and that inspired Stokes to write about the area, which then inspired him to write about Dracula.
Did it include him giving Bram the screenplay to the Hugh Jackman Van Helsing movie?
I have no idea what movie you're talking about.
Dude, you've never seen... Okay, you gotta watch that. It's a great Halloween movie.
What's the movie called?
Van Helsing.
Oh. Okay.
It's not good.
All right, so Dracula was published in 1897, and it was called an epistolary novel, which is a novel written as a series of documents. So it was written as a collection of realistic but completely fictional diary entries, telegrams, letters, ship logs, and newspaper clippings, all of which added a level of detailed realism to the story. When Dracula was first published in 1897, it was called, quote, a straightforward horror novel.
Have you ever read it?
I have not.
Yeah, I don't imagine they let you read that in Catholic high school.
Probably not.
It's pretty good. It's like all letters.
Yeah. So it's like definitely a different way of writing. I feel like it'd be kind of interesting because it's not just like the normal.
It's kind of like the original documentary.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
They like Borat, I love Borat.
Moat. Very nice. So, as you can imagine, Dracula follows the protagonist Count Dracula, believe it or not. In his attempt to move from Transylvania, so the Carpathian Mountains in Transylvania, to Whitby, England, so that he may find new blood and spread his undead curse. The novel also follows his battle with a small group of locals hell-bent on his destruction. Dracula moves from Transylvania to Whitby within the novel. So those are two very famous places in his life.
I believe he meets Dracula on a train or something in the book. I could be wrong about that.
Like the author himself meets...
Yeah, the guy who's writing the letters meets...
Gotcha. Okay, so it's not Dracula writing the letters?
No, it's the guy... It's like... I forget the main character's name, but he's writing letters about his interactions with Dracula.
Gotcha.
And I think he meets him on a train. I could be totally wrong about that.
I have no idea. I haven't read it. It looked kind of interesting, though. So,
yeah.
All right, so Stoker's Dracula is generally thought to have been based on the 15th century Prince of Wallachia, which is modern-day Romania, Vlad III. Vlad was born sometime between 1428 and 1431. Probably there's a very impronounceable name, so I'm just going to say Transylvania.
Can I hear it? How many K's does it have?
So it's Sighis with a squiggly at the bottom, Aora.
I'm not going to attempt that
Siasora, maybe. I'll just say it's spelled like Psy. So he was born in Transylvania between 1428 and 1431. His patronymic, I don't know what that word is.
Okay.
Dracula means dragon, which is derived from a membership that his father, Vlad II, was a part of, and it was given to him by the Kingdom of Hungary for the defense of Christianity against the Ottoman Empire. So his dad earned this title, I guess we'll call it, and then it carried on to Vlad, so he was known as Vlad Dracul, excuse me. And then, like I said, it was just called Dracula at the end.
Okay.
So that's where he got the inspiration for the name Dracula.
Okay.
So in 1442, Vlad and his brother Radu were taken as hostages by the Ottoman Empire to ensure the loyalty of their father. In the book, the vampire book, the encyclopedia... Oh, I can't say encyclopedia. The Encyclopedia of the Undead, J. Gordon Melton explains that Vlad's captivity in Turkey had a deeply negative impact on him. Quote, his treatment ingrained the cynicism so evident in his approach to life and infused him with a Machiavellian attitude toward political matters. End quote. This has also encouraged his strong desire and to seek revenge against those who wronged him.
Yeah, he really had it out for those Ottomans.
Yeah, he was not a fan of the Ottoman Empire, but to be fair, he was enslaved, like, multiple times by them.
I would say that the retaliation probably is a little over the top.
So in 1442 he was imprisoned, and now this was for 6 years. So 6 years later he's released from the dungeon, and upon release, with the support of the Ottoman Empire, Vlad is given the throne of Wallachia.
Okay.
So I don't know why they decided to free him then, but they're like, hey Vlad, we trust you now, we're going to give you the throne.
Real quick, where is Wallachia?
This is all in Romania.
Okay.
Or it's all in Transylvania, which is in Romania.
Okay.
So it's like on the outskirts of the what is that mountain range I said?
Carpathian?
The Carpathian Mountains.
That's it.
So Vlad occupied the throne of Wallachia for about 6 months. In autumn of that year, the Ottomans were like, never mind.
Hey, he did better than Lady Jane Grey.
That he did. So he lost his throne, and it was said that he was, quote, orphaned, betrayed, exiled, and chased through Central Europe's forest by his enemies, which are the Ottoman Empire. You can see why this guy was pretty pissed off, right?
Yeah.
So in 1456, he regained his throne and remained Prince of Wallachia until 1462, when the Ottoman Empire once again took away his crown. In 1462, the Ottomans under Mehmed II, who apparently this was really important, was the Sultan who conquered Constantinople at the time. So I guess the Ottomans were just like...
Was it Istanbul or Constantinople?
Well, Constantinople at that time. It was the 1400s, so...
Istanbul, not Constantinople.
I hate you. So Mehmed II of the Ottomans invaded Wallachia in 1462. But they were driven back by Vlad's use of guerrilla warfare. His power was well known throughout the Hungarian Empire. And there's even a letter written by the King of Hungary at the time that Dracula boasted that he had taken the Zistov fort after a fierce battle, and that about 410 Turks were killed during the siege. This fort's a little important to Vlad's history. Apparently this is where like a lot of his stuff was like dug up by archaeologists like over the past years. They found like cannonballs that were like engraved with his name on it, and like... Okay. So it's just a like really historic fort when it comes to him. He took the fort from the Ottomans. That's really all it stems for. Cool. So although Vlad and his armies had fought hard against the Ottomans and even his own brother Radu, who was working with the Ottomans, it wasn't meant to be. It is believed that Vlad ran out of money and could no longer fund his armies. So Vlad had to find someone that would help him. He thought the Hungarian Empire, the empire that's in charge of the region he's in, would help him out, right?
Naturally.
So we're not sure if he was either captured by the Hungarians or if he went to them and then they were like, haha, no. Either way, he was enslaved by the Hungarian Empire.
This guy has spent a lot of time in slavery.
It gets worse.
Okay.
Either way, he was imprisoned 12 years later. So 6 and 12. So he's been in prison for 18 years of his life.
Yikes.
Yeah, and he's been just fighting battles the time he's been free. So he's really not thriving.
So hold on. This guy gets arrested, gets out after years, and then just kills people, and then gets arrested again.
He's enslaved by the Ottomans so that they make sure that the king of Wallachia, who is his father, stays loyal to the Ottomans. Because they're like, hey, we have your kids. If you do anything, we'll kill them.
Gotcha.
So he's enslaved for 6 years then. And then I think probably his dad might have died. And then the Ottomans were like, all right, we'll see how this goes with you. And then like 6 months later, they're like, yeah, no, just kidding. Then he went on the run, started fighting them, and then eventually got enslaved by the Hungarians.
That sucks.
Who were fighting the Ottomans, but they probably just were like, Vlad, like, you're causing way too much problems. We're going to hand you over. So it didn't go well for him. So being captured by the Hungarians, he ended up losing his throne to Wallachia to his brother Radu, who, like I said, kept working with the Ottomans. So 12 years later, he would be released again. But this time it was because his brother Radu had just died suddenly. The Ottomans didn't know what to do, and they're like, I guess we're just going to give Vlad the throne yet again.
Interesting.
Yeah. Vlad Dracula would once again claim the throne of Wallachia in 1475.
I also, real quick, I like how he has this name Dracul, which is like a title that was given to his father for like valiantly defeating Ottomans, and this guy has just been in jail for like half his life.
Correct. Yeah. Also, I just love that he's literally called Vlad the Dragon.
That's a pretty baller
That's
name.
a sick name.
Yeah.
So he takes the throne in 1475, but as we've discovered, Vlad has horrible luck, right?
Yeah.
He dies a year later.
Wait. He died?
He died. So, yeah, believe it or not, he didn't like turn into a vampire and live forever.
Wait, what happened to all the impaling?
So, we'll get to that. I'm just giving you a little story of his life.
Okay.
He died a year later, and he disappeared in a battle against the Ottomans. They have no idea what happened to him, but there are very strong reports that his head was taken to Constantinople as a trophy.
Okay.
So he clearly didn't disappear, but I think he probably just like died somehow, mysteriously. Someone found his body, cut his head off, and then brought it to the Sultan.
Is the theory that he was killed in the battle?
So honestly, I've found multiple sources, and they all just kept saying he disappeared during a battle. But he was clearly found if his head was cut. There's also a report that he was buried in Italy. Like because that's where his daughter was married to like a prince in Italy, so his body was taken there. I don't know.
Interesting.
That's not confirmed. That was like a very recent report that like archaeologists found this thing and was like, oh, is that Vlad's name on it? So I think they're still trying to truly figure out what truly happened to him.
Yeah.
So his life was clearly full of misery, torture, imprisonment. He just had a horrible life, right?
Yeah.
So what inspired a novel about a man who had just absolutely shit luck, right?
Okay.
Well, Vlad was unhappy, and he had power. Now, today we know that someone who has vengeance and has power, that's probably not going to go well, right?
No.
So what did Vlad do to still be known today as Vlad the Impaler?
I would assume he impaled someone.
That is correct. So he was actually known throughout Europe during his time of being alive as just this cruel, devilish man.
Okay.
Now, I'm just going to dive right into it. It's going to get a little graphic here, but it's interesting graphic, right?
Okay.
So the thing that really got him put to the top of everyone's like, oh shit list, and why he was called the devil and everything was because in 1462, after his forces were retreating from the Ottomans, he impaled and put to display some 20,000 people outside a city of Targovist as a deterrent to the pursuing Ottomans. So he impaled 20,000 people. I don't know how many forces he had, but that's a lot of people. So these were like civilians of the town.
Okay, and when you say impale, you mean stab with stick?
Oh, I will go into grave detail.
Okay.
Of the impaling.
Okay.
So, this was a very great deterrent, and it worked really well because Mehmed II had to walk through this town and see the absolute carnage of thousands of decaying bodies being picked apart by crows, turned back, and retreated. I would probably run away too.
Yeah, I'd just be like, this guy's not worth it.
You crest a hill and you're like, oh, there's the town, and it's like 20,000. That's not like a small area.
That's a weird forest. I've never seen one like that. Yeah. And then you get up to it, and it's just people on...
It's rank, and there's crows flying around. Yeah. I would retreat. I'd be like, dude, this guy's messed up.
Yeah, this is not worth it. You can keep Wallachia.
Yeah. So, you may be thinking, were these men alive when they got impaled?
I was thinking that, Owen.
Yeah, absolutely they were. They were 100% alive.
Yeah.
So, the most common form of this torture/execution would go as follows. The imprisoned would be carried toward the pole by men who would then place them directly onto the greased or non-greased pole. Depends on if you wanted them to die quickly or just like slowly as gravity pulled you down onto the pole.
So, what part of you goes on it?
So, sorry, I had to find my line again because this is going to be interesting.
Okay.
The men would be placed so the pole would be directly lined up with his anus.
Okay.
And with gravity and time, the pole would slowly and horribly impale the man until eventual death. So do you remember earlier how I mentioned that in that fort that they found cannonballs?
Yeah.
So not only was it theorized that the cannonballs were used to siege places, that it was also used to tie around people's ankles.
Oh, so they went quicker.
If they liked you. Because I feel like I'd rather just get it the hell over with than sit there for like a day and a half baking in the sun while something's like being slowly shoved up me.
How big was, like diameter wise, how big is the pole?
So they vary because they would just cut down the trees in the area.
Oh, okay.
So it was a big deforestation act, and then they would plant the trees again, just with guys on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the poles varied. I don't think there was like an exact measurement to the
Gotcha.
poles. There was also another way that they would impale you, is that they were just like, two guys would hold you. You'd be like supine essentially, and they would just put it through your abdomen.
Okay, that one sounds preferable.
Yeah. That one is definitely the preferred way to die.
That's the one where they're like in a hurry.
Yeah, exactly.
They got
like,
more. They got to sweep the floors later.
The first 15,000 got it through the ass, and then the last 5 were like, just toss them on. So yeah, this happened to 20,000 people at one time. It's estimated that like, we'll get to it. We'll get to how many people he has estimated executed. This wasn't the only sadistic thing Vlad Dracula did. It is said that he would also, quote, roast children alive and have the mothers who watched eat the remains.
Oh my God.
Also, he would rip the breasts off of wives, women, and then force the husbands to eat it. So he would take families, cook their kid, have the mom eat the kid, and then rip the breasts off the women, and then have the husband eat the breasts, and then they would all be impaled.
Did he get a Michelin star?
Probably wasn't that good. But so he would force you through this insane torture and then just like end up impaling you in the end.
You know what?
Yeah, so it's just like a horrible way to go.
So you may like, some people may be like, oh, well, people treated him bad and that's how he turned this way. I read something a while ago that said like when he was a kid, he would like throw dogs off the roof of his palace.
Vlad?
Yeah, so it's clearly he's just a messed up person.
I think he's very messed up.
Yeah.
I also do think it is a lot of how you're like raised in your early years, because like a lot of serial killers had really bad childhoods. A lot of serial killers also bumped their heads, had head injuries when they're kids. So maybe he fell, but he was also treated like shit.
Yeah.
So he was just an unhappy man. So those were his preferred methods of torturing and killing you. So after this torture, he would impale all of them. It is said that he enjoyed this form of torture so much that he would have servants prepare him a meal, and if time allowed, he would sit down in front of this just forest of people while eating dinner and watching them scream in agony.
I saw a painting of that.
Yes, I also saw that painting.
And it's really funny because, like, the painting, he just has the blandest look.
Yep.
As, like, he has, like, a bite of chicken in one hand, and, like, there's just people screaming all around him.
So he was just messed up.
Also, he had a big old schnoz.
Did he? Oh, in the painting?
Yeah, massive nose.
They didn't do him well, huh?
No. Here, I'll find a picture.
Perfect. I'm really excited. So, there were no known... exact known numbers of his victims. We do know he killed 20,000 at one time. It's estimated that nearly 40,000 people lost their lives to Vlad Dracula. And as I said, his main torture was impalement, so about 40,000 people in the Transylvania area were impaled to death.
I mean, Transylvania is not that big.
No.
It's
I don't know. It sounded like he kept getting attacked, and he wasn't attacking the Ottomans, so I'm not really sure. So it had to be in the Transylvania area.
It seems like that's like most of the people in Transylvania.
Yes. Probably, especially like back then, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to have to cut this out. I accidentally just closed my notes.
Speaking of cutting things out, let me show you this picture of Vlad. This guy's schnoz.
Yeah, it's really big, yeah.
Killer stash, though.
I was just about to say that. It's a hell of a stash. All right. So due to his 40,000 people, 20,000 confirmed, 40,000 that we believe he impaled, he was then given the charming name of Vlad the Impaler, which he is very well known for today.
It's fitting, I would say.
Very fitting. So even with these horrible acts of mass murder, would you think that he would be hailed as a hero?
No.
To this day, he is considered a hero within Romania because he defended not only Christianity, but also Romania from the Ottoman Empire.
So he did really earn the Dracula name then, I guess.
He did earn the dragon name because he did end up fending these people off, even though he spent like 18 years in prison.
Yeah.
But like not only did he fend them off, he also like killed 40,000 of them.
You know, like I feel like if the president was like, don't worry guys, we got ISIS, but I made them eat each other.
Yeah, you see like
I'd be like,
press photo.
Yo, Prez, like, that's not cool.
That's a little much. Yeah. So he's like, to this day, he is still hailed a hero within Romania. I'm sure not every Romanian is like, yeah, Vlad.
There's probably like one reformed person that's like, can we really just like forget this guy?
But so Vlad Dracula, or Vlad the Impaler, Vlad III of Transylvania, was the inspiration behind Dracula.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, so it said that, what was his name? Armin something, right? Armin Van Buren was the one who told Stokes the story. Stokes spun it and then came up with the idea of Dracula.
And then that turned into a great Hugh Jackman movie.
Oh my god, even the Hugh Jackman movie. But yeah, and that also inspired like every vampire movie since.
Where does Nosferatu fit into this?
Is that also Dracula?
It's Nosferatu, which
like
is a vampire.
Yeah, because I've seen like the old like black and white movies of Nosferatu.
So,
I think, real quick to interrupt you, I think Van Buren, the guy that told the story, told him about vampires. So I think that within this Transylvania area is where vampires originated.
So there were already vampire legends
Within Transylvania. It was brought to this guy in England who then spun it as Dracula was like the OG vampire. And everyone knows vampires because of Dracula.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense then.
Yeah, it was like a small little rural, story.
I have heard, and I can't confirm this, but I have heard that vampire stories are based off people with tuberculosis.
I could see that because they're coughing up blood.
They'll cough up blood, like and they'll always have blood in them.
No, who was it?
Edward.
Her brother.
Edward the Sixth. Yeah. So yeah, they like always have blood in their mouth.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They'll be like,
were terrified
drink blood, when really it's just like a horrible respiratory disease.
Terrible disease. Yeah. But yeah, so that's the story behind Dracula and the inspiration of Dracula.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this special spooky episode of the What Happened podcast.
I hated that.
I loved that.
All right.
See you next time.
Yeah, thank you guys.
What happened?